Hello, I'm Gus Downing, the publisher and editor of the D&D Daily, and this is the LP News Network. We're here today at the Loss Prevention Research Council's Precision LP Impact Conference, being held at the University of Florida from October 2nd to October 4th, 2017. This episode today is the second in a series of 7 episodes designed to give you a thorough understanding of the only full-time, team-driven LP and AP academic efforts in retail history. And we strongly recommend you watch the entire series and learn how an academic approach is helping LP and AP impact the total retail enterprise as we introduce precision loss prevention. We'd like to thank CAM Connections, a division of ADT, for having the vision and commitment to the industry, for sponsoring the entire series, and we invite you to thank them directly by using social media and by visiting their website. So let's get started. Today's session is entitled The Future of LP, Innovation, Evaluation, and Collaboration. With us today is Reed Hayes, PhD, CPP, Director of the LPRC, and John Voytilla, Senior Vice President for Party City Stores and the immediate past Chairman of the Board of Advisors for the LPRC. Along with him is Brian Bazer, Vice President, Asset Protection and Safety for the Ascena Retail Group and current Chairman of the BOA for the LPRC. Brian is the immediate past Vice Chairman of the LPRC and has been involved in the organization for well over 10 years. The LPRC is the retail industry's only academic model that exclusively conducts research to develop, test, and validate crime and loss control evidence-based solutions that improves the performance of its members and the industry, and by developing the most effective ways to support total enterprise success in various unique retail environments. The founding retailers included Target, Walmart, Office Depot, CVS, Gap, Home Depot, Bells, and Barnes & Noble. And now, the LPRC has grown to over 110 members, 60 solution providers, 45 retailers, 2 startups, 3 manufacturers, and 7 industry leaders. To date, the LPRC has conducted over 120 real-world loss prevention research projects for retailers and their partners. At the very heart of the LPRC is the LPRC team and the LP and AP industry leaders who drive innovation, collaboration, and evaluation so that loss prevention and asset protection can help drive total enterprise success through precision loss prevention. Gentlemen, thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
You know, how do the LP and AP leaders really leverage the LPRC to boost the success of the organizations of their respective departments and such? And why are the Board of Advisor members so heavily invested? John?
Thanks, Gus. It's great to be here again, by the way. And let me take the word collaboration. You mentioned it in the opening. We're very proud of the collaborative efforts of the Board of Advisors. It's a group that works very closely together through a series of conference calls and a couple annual meetings where we get together and actually, in a collegial environment, talk about the problems each of us are facing, and more importantly, what our members are telling us that they would like to have research done. And part of that collaboration allows us to frame the settings like for the Loss Prevention Research Council Impact Conference that we're at this week. And it's a year-long process, but it's the research, and I'll tee it up to Reed to talk about the evaluation that allows us then to take that research out into the membership.
And what kind of research is it? I mean, how do you go about conducting that research and so on? It's kind of an open-end, generic question, Reed.
Well, I mean, I can go back to what John was emphasizing on the collaboration, that we need multiple retailers to submit information or data to us, so we need that cooperation. And then we need them to open their doors and to us as far as using their sites, their parking lots, their stores, their distribution centers, or fulfillment centers. So we need that kind of collaboration. And so what we do is each of the working groups meet monthly by phone or in person, primarily by phone. And in that case, we outline what are their objectives for the year and what do they want to accomplish, what are the outcomes for that year. And you might have 8 or 12, you might have 20 or 30 chains, retailers that are on there, solution partners collaborating, and then our science team are on each call. And they just decide, what do you want? So we might do a survey, Gus, where we're talking to a sampling of store associates or shoppers to get an idea of what their perceptions are. And we might be talking to offenders, shoplifters, or whatever, heavy-duty instrument or questionnaire that we're going to go through with them, get an understanding what they think or what they notice, and so on. We do a lot of quantitative modeling. We do a lot of statistical analyses where we collect information, we're seeing what seems to correlate, controlling for other things. We are looking at changes, statistically. Well, did this change in these locations that we tested more than they changed in the places that were control sites, for instance, that weren't tested? And finally, what we do is big experimental designs where we might randomly select 40 or 140 sites. We might randomly assign these guys get this countermeasure, these guys get this variation, and these guys get nothing as control. So long answer, short question, but we use a variety we call multi-method research. We might do all the above for a given project.
So the retailers and the members are the ones that really bring what they want research to the Board of Advisors. And the Board of Advisors kind of, determine what's most important for the industry, what's the best value and return. And then it's assigned to the working groups. And then they go about doing their work throughout the year.
That's
Exactly.
right.
Yeah.
Brian probably could talk about that, but from an innovation standpoint, it's really part of selecting what research we want done.
Yeah, I think in today's industry, we have to work more efficient, right? And by being able to leverage the learnings of the collective group, we're able to be better, faster, and more cost efficient in being able to deploy those solutions that actually we know are valid and work.
How does the confidentiality situation work out? I mean, retailers are very cautious and conservative and concerned about information sharing, about it getting out, or about social media picking up a story. I mean, how do you go about handling and managing that process?
Well, that's really our area. And so what we do is we sign non-disclosures if that retailer would like that. They share their information with us. We're going to aggregate the information, do the analysis, and so we're going to share results, but not call out an individual retailer's results, except to them, unless that retailer says, you know what, I don't have a problem sharing this. So, but we are dealing with very sensitive information about crime events that happen on their properties, about their gross margins and pricing, item pricing, and things like that. So that's very carefully guarded by our team, but only shared back with that retailer.
That's critical, obviously, in the confidentiality agreement that you have executed with everyone. And everybody knows that going into it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And obviously with the growth, of the conference itself, that's something that what appears to be doing quite well. They're accepting it and agreeing to it. So it appears as though the C-level executives out there in the retail industry are accepting it as well. And would you characterize, is that a good characterization?
Absolutely. We continue to grow. You pointed out we have 45, 46 retail chain members and started with 10. We stayed around the 15 mark for about 8 years, and it started escalating to the point where we're now talking probably another 20 or 30 interested retail chains.
And you've done 120 projects, since your inception. Can you give us an idea of some of those projects and the vastness of them and the different areas that they hit?
Well, we've looked at everything from coupon and gift card fraud projects, a lot of shoplifting and shoplifting resistance. What might trigger that? What are the variables you might look for in the individual? We've done a lot on product protection devices. And today we've talked a lot about at the conference dosage. In other words, do I use this or do I use that is important, but how do I use this? And so how you do something is more important than what you do. And so how do you dose it? How many public view monitors do you put in? Where do you put them? What height? What size? How do you help them be more noticeable, more recognizable, more credible? And so that's the research that we're working on, is always helping them repurpose something, re-energize something, integrate some things, or come up with something new. And then how do we deploy that better? And these guys are examples. They have different store environments, so they not only have different issues, but they have different staffing models and all kind of variables. So we have to work with that, and we want to, and generalize. So if something that's going to go in a Zales jewelry store is probably not going to fly in an AutoZone, certainly not in a Bloomingdale's maybe, and so forth. So that's part of the challenge.
So out of the 120, I mean, what's the average time does it take to do a particular research project? I mean, have you looked at that? I mean, some of them I would imagine could be fairly quick, and some of them could be very long.
Yes, we like the short ones. Everybody, these guys particularly like the short ones. When we do the experimental designs, what we call randomized controlled trials, we advocate that they be larger samples and last much longer. And so we would advocate for a year or more, but we normally can get 90 days, maybe 6 months. And the reason, by the way, is if something takes effect and you start to see loss levels drop and the test scores not control, at some point it may start to, what we call regress to the mean, but it might start to go back up and not be effective. We've all seen that with all kind of programs you guys have deployed or technologies. So we want to understand why not, and what can we do to maintain that level of effectiveness and so on. So we advocate, I'm kind of on the soapbox here, but longer testing. But surveys can maybe take a week. Offender interviewing projects might take 2 months, but an experiment could take 2 months to 2 years.
So all of the members, the retail members, have the ability to submit their research needs or questions and such to the Board of Advisors.
That's right. We on an annual basis, part of what the Board of Advisors does is kind of framework our priorities for the year. And one of the priorities we do every year at the beginning of the year, which by the way starts after this Impact Conference, is start laying the groundwork for Reed and his team to prioritize research projects for the next year. And we've done that since the inception, and we've gone from 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 a year to this past year. How many projects actually did your team do?
31. 31 completed this year.
And you're presenting all of that at this conference?
Right.
Okay.
Right, and then the other benefit of membership is then you have access to those white papers and to those studies through our internal website, through the LPRC, and that's where the membership does have its privileges.
Yeah, right, exactly. So what about the solution providers? I mean, are they full members or are they a different category, Brian?
No, full members. That's part of the beauty of the Loss Prevention Research Council. It's the only opportunity for the solution partners and retailers to work collaboratively on identifying and solving the issues that are facing our industry today.
Can they submit ideas for research or products or anything of that nature? I mean, do they have that same ability and right?
Yep, and most of the time they do, because obviously they've got things that they're focusing on or things that they'd like to put into the system and see, does this work? What is the impact? Is this a solution that there's going to be a need? We don't want to solve a problem that doesn't exist.
Well, what about the competitive issues, though? Within this small industry, you've only got X number of solution providers for this product, X number for that product, X number for this. I mean, how does that come into play, and how do you balance that?
It's not easy all the time, but there is something collegial about this organization. You talk about collaboration. Actually, we were going to be called Innovation and Evaluation, and it was John Voytilla, however many years ago, 6 or 8 years ago, said, well, what about collaboration? And he said, I think that's a big part of what's going on here, and that's why I think he started out today with that. But it is huge. I think it's a little collegial that the solution guys are looked at differently, as Brian described here at LPRC, than maybe some other venue. But they are definitely, and treated that way, but they kind of pick up on that. And they get on the calls, they get involved, they get engaged. They're very careful not to make any working group call or webinar or the Impact Conference itself a selling environment. It's a place to learn, it's a place to build deep contacts and relationships with the right people. It's the idea, it's a place that you can trial balloon some things, but it's not a place to come and try and sell something.
Right, right.
Yeah. And I think it also goes back to your first question about why would leaders in the industry be involved with LPRC? And one of the pieces, in addition to the information and the learnings that we're able to gather as a retailer, also it's us being able to give back to the industry. And that's one of the things, going back to Reed's point, is the amount of effort and interest in adding value to us as a collective industry is second to none.
Absolutely. So the solution providers have the equal ability to submit research projects, thoughts, and ideas?
They can, but they don't have voting rights on the board of advisors.
Okay.
So it's separation, if you will, from what they can and can't do. The solution providers, though, that I've talked to really are wanting to hear from the retailers, what are the problems? What are the pain points? And again, it's not so much solving a specific problem with a simple solution. It's more at a macro level of saying, this is the changes that we're seeing in the retail landscape. And this is some of the needs that, as you said in the beginning, about the future. Where is it going? And how do we get ahead of this from a crime standpoint, from a shrink reduction standpoint, from an understanding of where our business is going? So that's the collaborative part of our organization.
So in effect, you're steering the solution providers for the future.
I don't know if steering, I would agree with you, steering so much as it is more discussing what we're facing and what we're seeing in the future. Nobody knows what the future is going to hold,
Right.
but you do know some of the common pain points that you're having today, and just having those dialogues allows you to, I think, get people into the right spirit of trying to solve some of those problems and investing in the research. And that's what the membership dues provide, is the ability for Reed to hire the scientists to actually do the independent scientific research and evaluation.
Now, and this is in conjunction with the University of Florida's crime prevention team, correct?
That's right. So I'm on both. So I'm a full-time faculty at University of Florida as a research scientist faculty track. We have 3 tenure track, professor track. We have the lecturer track, just teach, and we have the research scientist track, which I'm on. And so we have a team at UF on crime control, crime prevention. But in parallel, there are 5 full-time employees or team members at the Loss Prevention Research Council, which is an independent entity, but there's this interconnectedness. It's very entrepreneurial here in that way. And it's like that in a lot of other disciplines now. And so that's how that works.
And how do you audit yourselves, so to speak? I mean, does the University of Florida kind of keep an eye on that from an audit perspective? I mean, if you know where I'm going with that.
Well, they keep an eye on me, but yeah. But you have expectations. You are expected to, provide good scholarship and scientific work that contributes to the knowledge. In other words, the literature, the theory and research body. And so I'm expected to publish 2 to 3 peer-reviewed journal articles in respect to what we call impact-rated journals, and then present at academic conferences, American Society of Criminology in this case, or Academy of Criminal Justice Sciences. And then on the teaching mission, I've got an online course that's getting ready to launch with 2 versions. One will be for undergraduate UF students. It's been my taught course, and then another version, which is the same material for the profession, for the industry, and which would come with the UF certificate. And it actually is the first of what will be 3 courses these guys know. So that's kind of that mission. As far as LPRC, as long as the money is flowing from LPRC to UF and not the other way around, I think they're all happy.
Yeah. So your interaction with academia from a macro standpoint at 35,000 feet is kind of gives them the ability to kind of have a barometer on where LPRC is going, the value it's adding, and so on.
That's right.
And then again, you wouldn't be growing to the point that you are with the number of members that you have if you weren't adding value.
Right.
Bottom line.
One of the other things that compliment Dr. Reed and what he's been able to do over the last few years, we've brought in other academic speakers and researchers from around the country at different universities. This year we have a professor from the University of New Haven, and presented his views on crime and the modeling around that. And last year we've had the same from different universities. So I think the share is not only with retailers and solution providers, but across the space around others that are doing research.
Can you give us an idea of maybe, if you can speak about it, the top 2 or 3 projects that you've done, that you've completed, and maybe some of the value it's added to the industry, generically speaking, if that's possible?
Well, I think on the product protection side, the biggest win is the public view monitors that we miniaturized and call them enhanced public view monitors, EPVMs, going back about 9 years ago. Most of the retailers that are members of LPRC decide to participate in what we call store lab. They throw a store into the pot. That's an innovation location for them corporately and us as a group. And so in Gainesville, we probably got 22 retailers that we use their store as a store lab. Some of the retailers don't have a store in Gainesville, so we might use one in Jacksonville or Atlanta or someplace else. Orlando, for example. But in those locations, we test and trial these things. So before we had the innovation lab, we used just the stores. Now we start in the lab typically and then go to the stores. So in the CVS store lab in Gainesville, I was able to do, and still we do all kind of things in there. Back the guidance we joke was, as long as you don't blow the place up, let's go. So, but in there we trialed the idea of how do we inject risk into a specific place. And so we could do that with a public view monitor, but we couldn't do it with a big one. So that's something that we developed here, have tested over the years.
Is there another one that you could share with us?
Right, I'm trying to think, I think on the violent crime, we've had a lot of wins. We break down how people accomplish a crime, their steps and stages, and then align possible solutions with each step and stage. And then that gives us a parameter, a framework to test in. And I think we've made some real gains at that pharmacy point. So we've reduced some robbery events in those areas.
Reed's being modest too and touting the benefits of the research. And I think one of the key areas too is around benefit denial and understanding how can you look at theft prevention in such a way that it deters theft up front by deterring the fact that there's no benefit for the person stealing stuff because they can't activate it unless it goes through the point of purchase. And then working with manufacturers around production of packaging and how do we enhance the packaging of product. So it really is shaping the way that we sell product today by the way it's packaged and the way it's sold through the POS system.
So there's also, I mean, speaking from your vantage point, an educational value for all the participants beyond that of a finished project.
You know what's interesting, and this year is the first time we tried to bring we brought posters to Impact last year, the year before last, and where research projects that are the really cool ones or best, we think have the broadest implications across type of retailers, are going to learning labs. We have 7 learning labs on stage in front of everybody. But those that are maybe not quite as impactful or significant compared to the other 30 or so go on posters like you would see in high school, but you see this in academic environments. You're going to see, if I go to a Society of Criminology, there's going to be hundreds of posters in there. So that's been introduced here to bring that out, and I think that's been an innovation that has helped transfer that knowledge to these guys. But the other one was the idea of a discussant. And in fact, you know, Brian was just a discussant in Learning Lab 5, I think it was, where we looked at parking lots and how do we make them more secure so that the good shopper, she wants to come in to your store and feels great when she leaves the store. She doesn't come out from a great experience to a burglarized vehicle or a panhandler or whatever, or not want to come in the first place. So, but Brian's role was after I kind of go through some of the intro and some data and some results and we do some polling, live polling with the app, Brian's a discussant. And Brian, you can talk about maybe on how that works.
Well, one of the things, Gus, you talked about is kind of the relationship between the solution partner and the retailer. And we find that when we're doing a session like the Learning Labs, to have not only the academic side of things, but also the real world side of things. So here's the study, here's the practical application, and here's how retailers are using it today, or have some discussion of how we can use it today. So once again, going from the theoretical to the practical.
Yeah, and we had a speaker from another university last year, and she went through a lot of really good pharmacy robber research, where she interviewed a lot of people in prison, incarcerated subjects, and so you have people in your group that say, well, I have a pharmacy, this is great, or I don't have a pharmacy, I don't need to know this, but you have the other group that says, I don't have a pharmacy, but man, there's some things in there that I can interpret to my environment. The discussant role is to help speed that up and help everybody pick out things that they can take home and say, you know what, I don't have that issue, or it's not exactly like that, but you know what, here's how I could use that.
And from that perspective, I mean, you're looking at it from a standpoint of what motivates that person to steal, to commit the crime, and how do you deter it, stop it, or displace it?
Oh, it's all psychology. It's
Right,
all
right.
we care about is what is going through their mind and what are they picking up on? How are they interpreting it? You know, there's always cognitive distortion on a scale, but how are they interpreting that and now their response? It's stimulus and response. And so That's all we're doing. It's one big head game to get people to want to buy this thing, to want to come to your store to buy it, to buy more while you're there. Well, we're doing the same thing. Hey, you know what? You don't want to come here if you're thinking about this, or you thought about it once you got here. It wasn't premeditated, it was opportunistic. You know what? Not here, not now. And so we're manipulating the environment. That's how we do that.
Which
So
means
all the research is based on that.
Which means you're building a culture in each store,
That's right.
so to speak. Whether it be visual aids or physical deterrence or benefit denial, you're trying to develop the culture to where when the consumer comes in, they don't want to steal. They're not going to steal, or they're stopped from stealing.
And everybody feels safer
Right.
and more secure.
Right.
And so we work a lot with the University of Florida Retailing Center here. They're not looking at deviance like we are, they're looking at the positive side, but we work hand in hand because it is one thing. And if she comes in that, doesn't want to come to that place, or won't come after dark when it's actually convenient, or she's in the store, it's dusk, and she doesn't want to go back out, or doesn't want her loved one to go there, we got a big fail here, no matter how good your stuff is or how neat the environment is. So there are key principles here that we're all working on together to sell more, lose less, and so on.
In your 10 working groups, you have 10 of them if I'm,
10.
and you have how many action teams?
Well, we include the 2 action teams in that working group
Okay.
definition now.
Okay. And they're dealing with verticals. They're dealing with retail in a specific industry, correct?
The action teams, one deals with food and drug, and the other is specialty stores like apparel, auto parts, jewelry, more specialized stores, party.
And then the rest of them, the 8 remaining, are specific project driven.
They're issue driven in a way,
Issue
yes.
driven.
So you've got supply chain protection, we've got violent crime control, we've got product protection, in-store product protection. You know, you've got data analytics. How do you collect, code, clean, and analyze and report data? And we've got an innovation working group. Let's look forward. What is this thing called a retail enterprise going to be looking like? All right, what are we going to need to be doing going down the road, and so on.
So as a member of this organization, you can put your team members and can assign team members to the working groups. And you and I talked not long ago about individual development plans. One of the things that we talk about as a BOA is to leverage our team members in each of our respective organizations to be part of a working group. And it gives us the opportunity to stay connected to all the different projects that are going on, and gives a developmental opportunity for different team members that perhaps don't have the opportunity to come to a Loss Prevention Research Council Impact Conference this year, and to still participate and add value not only to their companies but also to their career growth.
So it's evolved quite nicely over the last 5 years.
Evolve is the best word, and I think that's normal. When 10 years ago, King Rogers, or 17 years ago, said, hey, we need something, guys, let's do it. And 9 other guys said, I don't know what you're talking about, but let's do it. And here we are 17 years later, and we're all trying to figure out how to do this. But I think the working groups and the playbook to get everybody engaged and the impact conference and so on are helpful.
Well, and you're at 110 members with the 45 retailers and the 60 solution providers. I'd say that's fantastic growth.
Yeah, and we're adding new companies like Procter & Gamble, Mead Johnson, Bacardi, Duracell, that have high sales, highly popular, but a high loss. They're getting involved too, to partner with these guys and collaborate with them in these working groups. And more and more, we probably got 10 or 12 more solution guys that want to join, and on, so yeah.
So, you know, when you look at the member list, I mean, I see the retail industry, the top 100. You know, what about the smaller retailers? What about, you know, the medium-sized retailers? How do they get involved? Is there a value there for them? In how do you go about adding value to that type of a retailer?
Well, I think we have members that span the spectrum in regards to the size of the organization, the size of their departments. So I think that, or I know there's value to all the departments or all the companies independent of the size. We do believe that there's maybe an additional opportunity for the LPRC in regards to reaching out to smaller organizations that might not be able to join. And so we're actively having discussion on how do we better serve those groups and how can we support them so that, once again, they can contribute and add value to the larger organization. Because once again, it's about supporting the industry.
One of our initiatives, Gus, is around smart growth. So ours isn't about numbers. It isn't a goal to get to 200 or to 250. It's about targeting those retailers and solution providers that that we'd like to see join the organization to provide value and help us fund the research, which is really what this organization is founded on. So today, as Brian said, we have a very diverse group of retailers, a very diverse group of solution providers, but the Smart Growth Committee is the one that's really chartered with going out and looking for new members.
You know, the current state of robberies, I mean, we've seen some significant growth in the robbery rates over the last couple of years. And even the FBI in their crime stats last week stated that violent crime and such is up, notably. What is the LPRC doing there, and how are you, impacting the retail industry and identifying that as a problem and working on it as a group?
Well, I think it's probably been 3 years since we established the Violent Crime Working Group, and that was designed to address that and help everybody understand that, again, the box, your store is not the only thing. That parking lot is part of your environment. It's all a part of that shopper experience about sales and the ethics of operating a safe place and so forth. So that Violent Crime Working Group was established. We have multiple retailers. We have solution partners in that group, and we have identified, armed robbery, parking lot crime, and even commercial burglary, especially serial commercial burglary, as 3 areas of opportunity. They look at shoplifter resistance during apprehensions, and then we also are looking at active attack, stabbing or shooting. But so those are there. We're looking at them. We're doing literature reviews on everything. What is everybody around the world looking at? What do they think? What are they finding through their research and discussions? And we have that. But now what we've done is in the innovation lab, we've got multiple technologies in what we call Zone 4, the parking lot, to get a better idea who's coming in, how many of them, are they clustering, are they doing things outside in that parking lot area, gaining visibility and transparency to that local decision maker, as well as the corporate decision maker, and giving real-time alerts and information on that. So we're working on that. And then obviously all the deterrent countermeasures that we can do. What are things we can do out what we call Zone 5, out in cyber and built space, to convince people, you know what, not here, not this place. Guys are getting caught. We're working with one of our members that's former spooks, if you will, or intelligence, and we're working on collecting things off social media that indicate people are coming our way, as well as if we've had a major robbery event, and they're happening, as you said, all the time. Let's see if we can't find these people using social media and very sophisticated strategies. All the way through things we can do to slow people down, to make it appear too risky, you're going to get caught, to make it not worth it. And so in all 5 we call zones of influence, we're working on armed robbery and parking lot crime, for example.
Right. Thank you.
And I think specifically to that too, we held 2 summits, one in Houston and one in Baltimore this past year, around taking a deeper dive into that subject and some of the research that's done in those specific areas, and partnering with local and state law enforcement in those 2 areas to understand and help create solutions for that issue.
I'm really glad Brian brought it up. I think at the Houston, we set objectives. We want to get all the right people in, and the right people. We actually had state, or local, state, and federal. We had multiple FBI special agents, ATF. We had Homeland Security investigations. We had marshals, and on and on. So those guys were all represented. The county, the surrounding counties, not just Harris County, they had their intelligence people, their gang units, they had their robbery people. They even had the commanders and as well as HPD and so on, commanders of their robbery investigations division, the deputy commander, their top investigators, and everybody's in there. And so we outlined sort of our 5 zones of influence, how we're mapping, looking for opportunities, clusters of these events by place and time, types, and so on. And then what are opportunity areas? Okay, what R&D do you want to conduct? So we brought all these guys together. I think we had 18 retail chains. And so everybody's in there learning together, making the contacts, and then coming up with a strategy. And then we kind of leave them behind, and they take that over. And we did the same thing in Baltimore with even more attendance.
Right. Yeah, I heard about it to a certain extent. This also includes active shooter as well, so I don't want to just be focused on the armed robbery aspect, but it also includes your active shooter work as well, correct?
Right. So we're looking at a couple things in that strategically, we're set up to support not just the local decision maker. That's where we started, but obviously the corporate decision maker, these guys. And so we have a SOC lab, a Security Operations Center lab. It's an EOC, fully functional. We try and have the latest and greatest tools in there to much more quickly and accurately be alerted something is going on, validate that, and then start defining who, what, when, where, what is going on. And let's tap into video feeds. Let's look at local media reports. Let's look at social media feeds and on and on. Paint the picture and support the right decisions and so on. Tactically, we're looking at in store, what do you do to prevent? What do you do to respond?
Good. Well, Brian, we want to wish you the best of luck for the next 4 years, I believe. And John, thank you for your last 4 years of leadership.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
And Reed, great job.
Appreciate that.
Thanks for having us here.
Thank you.
And thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this episode. We'd like to thank you for watching. And until next time, let's keep them all safe out there.